Here we have all the pieces now, and I'm going to do the neck. I'm going to pick up for the neckband using 3 and 25 millimeter needles. Pick up 13 stitches up right front, 7 stitches from sleeve, 23 stitches from the back, 7 stitches from the other sleeve, and 13 stitches from the left front. That's 63 stitches all together. I'm going to knit 1 by 1 rib, I think for 6 rows because I haven't done it yet, and then cast off and rib. And I always pick up the stitches and do the neck before I do the sewing up. A lot of people do the sewing up first and then do the neck, but I find sometimes where you pick up the the threads for to sew down the seams, you end up sometimes with like loose loops. So I like to pick up the stitches for the neck first and then do the sewing up, because if there's any loose loops where you join the seams together, you can work them in. So I'm going to pick up first stitch and get the needle in. Now I blow that up. At the end. Picked up a bit of the thread there as well. That's it. It's the first loop. There's 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. Oh, I missed a bit of the thread there. This is a hard one to pick up because the thread split easy. Two, 4, 6. Seven. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. My last one here, that's 13. And when you're picking up the stitches where you might see some of the stitches loose, I go down below that stitch so you don't get so many, otherwise you get holes in the where you pick the stitches up. That was a little bit difficult, that one, picking them up from the front. This wool does tend to split. So you can see the ends are they unravel. So it's this particular wool, but other wool is easier to work with. Now there's 7 stitches from the the sleeve. That's one sleeve done. Now for the stitches from the back. That's the back picked up. Now these stitches are facing the wrong way, so I'm going to have to put them on a needle. That's the sleeve, the second sleeve picked up. And I'm going to do 13 stitches down the front. The other front. Do one. Two. Three. Four. That's 13 stitches down the front. The other front now. Now the first row I'm going to knit, do a knit row. I was a little bit off that, it shouldn't be there. And I'm going to knit to the end of this row, and then I'll come back when I've done that. So that's the first row where I like to knit a row like that, so you get like a garter row on the wrong side, on the right side, before you start the knit one, purl one. Now I'm going to do the rib. So there'll actually be 5 rows of rib. It's 6 with that garter row that we've just done. So I've knit 5 rows, including the garter row at the start, and I think that's enough. I was going to do 6, but I think 5's enough. I'll cross it out on here. Change that. I had 6 here, I'm changing it to 5. And I'm going to cast off and rib now. Get some wool out. And I'm doing twisted rib for here, so I'm casting off twisted rib, the same as the kind of rib I'm knitting. And you need to make your, not to pull your stitches tight. You need it quite loose for the neck. It's just knitting one, passing the stitch over, purl one, passing the stitch over, knit one, passing the stitch over, purl one, pass the stitch over, knit one, pass the stitch over, purl one, pass the stitch over, and knit one, pass the stitch over, and do that all the way across the row. And as you can see, there is a little bit stretch in that. You don't want it tight. So I'll meet you when I finish that row. And that is the neck done on it. See, you fold it in half, and there's enough stretch in it to go around a child's neck. And the next thing to do would be to sew it up before I put the button bands on. And what I mentioned about I sew up after I put the neck on, as you can see, there are loose stitches here. Sometimes you get that when you sew it up and then put the neck on, and then you have to find how to get rid of these loose stitches there, which is part of the sewing up. You just tighten them up with the as you sew them. Yeah. And so now I will show you how I do the sewing up on this. So now I have my pin cushion, that needle, my scissors, and I pin these pieces this seam. I'll have a bit where I joined the wool on, where I'll have to get rid of that end. And I just pin it. I have two ends up here. I just tie them. Cut one of them off, and I'll just over sew that where I've cut it off. So I flat sew my raglan seams like this. Put that down, hold that down. Just take a stitch from either side and just keep on flat sewing down the seam. And that is how you sew those seams. And you can see it's flat on the other side. It's not bunched up. Four seams. And now I'll show you how I do the side and sleeve seams when I get that far. So that's all 4 seams sewn up to the other side. And now I'll show you how to do the side seams. You start with the sleeve. Right up again. And I do the cuff bit first. Put a pin in. Thread my needle. And you flat stitch the cuffs. Like the way you did the seams for the raglans. And just take 1 stitch from one side, from each side, and just flat stitch over them. Get down to the edge of the seam, and that's it. Pin down. And turn it inside out there, and you can see where it's been stitched down the seam. It's nice and flat. Turn that back again. And now to do the seams, I'm going to back stitch the seams. So I'll pin it up to the armhole. Put a few pins in to keep it in place. And I'm going to back stitch this seam. And I always leave the long length on the when I start the pieces, the sleeves, the sides and everything. I always leave a long length like this for the sew up. It saves you adding little bits afterwards. And it's a back seam, is just, you just keep going behind the stitch you've just stitched. As close to the edge as you can get, as you don't want a great big thick seam. And you can see the Just see the stitching on the back where it's been back stitched. Back stitch is just going behind where your wool comes out. You just go behind the stitch. So you're back stitching all the time. And that's how you back stitch a seam. And I will come back when I finish those seams and show you the finished thing. That's the cardigan all sewn up. All I need to do now is to pick up the stitches for both sides for the bands, the button band and the buttonhole bands. So the measurements for this is, it's going to be 11.5 inches, which is what you want, a little bit extra, so 22 inch, but you do need a little bit extra. It'll probably measure about 12 inches there by the time I put the bands on, because the bands will pull it apart a little bit. But the side measurement is, I'll do it up that way you can see it, 8.5 inches. The sleeve seam, 9.5 inches, and the full body measurement is 14 inches. And I'm showing you the side seam down here. This is how I showed you about picking up making the stitches in the right place so that you get them matching. As you can see, this is the side seam down here. That's the rosebuds on both sides, and they match all the rest of them. That's how I work things like that out. Well, I've put the button band on, and the same as what you see on this one with the stitch markers. It measures 13 inches from the bottom to the top, and I've placed markers every 2 inches and left 1 inch for the bottom, and I'm working on 6 stitches to the inch. So there's going to be 12 stitches between each set of markers. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 9 in this last one here. So we're working on 181 stitches all together. So I'll show you, I'll pick up some of the stitches on here now. That's how I did the other band, using the markers to pick the stitches up. Blow this up a little bit. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I picked up 9 on the rib. I'll take that out. And when I'm counting up the stitches, I don't go from 1 to 81, I just count 12 between each marker. And when you're picking up the stitches, try to keep in one line all the way. You can see so you're just picking up through one stitch to keep the line even. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. I usually pick up 3 stitches and then miss a 1. So that's 4, 5, 6, miss a 1, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to have to use them all up to the thing. 9, 10, 11. The one where the marker is 12. And sometimes you can't get 3 and miss a 1. Sometimes you have to pick them all up, but you'll get to see when you're going here. So that's 1, 2, 3, miss 1, 1, 2, 3, that's 6, miss a 1, 7. And that's how you pick the stitches up. And as you can see, it's the straight line going there. That's all you need to do to pick all the stitches up until you get to the top. And then I will come back and do that, and I'll show you how to do the knitting. And as you can see, I've picked up all the stitches evenly, and now I'm knitting the first row, and the first row is knit, and that makes the garter ridge on the back of here, which is what I like on the bands, the same as what I did on the neck. And I'm knitting across this row now, and I will be back when I get to the end of it. And that's the first row I've knit, and now I'm going to start the knit one, purl one. And I'll be doing 5 rows and then casting off, but before I get that far, I'll be placing the buttonholes. So it's just knit 1, purl 1, rib for the moment. And I will be back when I get to the row when I put the buttonholes in. And this is where the stitch markers come in handy again. I've put stitch markers where I'm going to put the buttonholes. And I've spaced, I've put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knit stitches in between each spacer, in each space between each stitch marker. Sorry, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's the stitch markers evenly spaced for the 6 buttonholes. And I'll show what I'm going to do now. To knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 where the stitch marker is, taking the stitch marker out, the wool out the way, the wool forward, knit the next 2 stitches together, very loosely, so that there's a bit of space, and then carry on to the next stitch marker. Although I think that one there could have done with being a bit lower down, but I wouldn't have the right number. I might take that one back and take that, just make one extra stitch, knit stitches between this buttonhole and the next one. But it's just uneven the way it comes out. So wool forward, very loosely, knit two together. I usually pull that stitch up a little bit to slacken it off a little bit. And this is for the next buttonhole. Take that marker out. The wool forward. Knit the next two stitches together loosely. I usually put my finger on the wool down there to hold it down a little bit so it doesn't go so tight, and it doesn't make the buttonhole so small then. And it's purl one, knit one, purl one. And we're on to the next buttonhole. The wool forward. The two together. And knit one, purl one, and that's how you do the buttonholes. And I'll be back when I finish that row. So that's all the buttonholes done. As you can see, the buttonholes there and there and there. And I'm going to knit 2 more rows and then I'll be casting off. And now we're casting off these stitches now in rib. Quite loosely because you don't want them tight and pulling the band in. If that one didn't go well, I've got one of the strands in there, I'll have to take that out. This wool is in strands, and if you catch one, it's not right. There you can see a little bit give on the, keep testing it all the way down to make sure it's right. And I will meet you at the end of that row. So that's finished, except for getting rid of 1 or 2 ends. The long ends on the buttons, the button band side, I'll weave them up to the nearest buttonhole and use those for to sew on the buttons. I've got the buttons set out, 6 buttons there. So that's going to be nice when it's finished. So thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll let you see. I'll be doing a 24-inch, the same cardigan, 24-inch next time. So bye for now.